Hello, guys. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. On this platform, we talk about opportunities in education, anything that screams opportunity. And today, as you can see, I'm not at home, I'm at school. And one thing that struck with me today was how there has been a war. People will say A-level in Abasa or A-level is not so important. There's this narrative that is being pushed on the platforms whereby people say Polytechnic is much more better than A-level or A-level is much more better than Polytechnic. So today in this video, my role is to help us or to help each other clear the air. There's been a growing trend for the past years whereby students and parents are saying, you know what, A-level is not important, poly is the way to go. And normally this wave is fueled by stories of people who are actually trained in specific trades. When I say specific trades, I'm trying to talk about, plumbing, welding, motor mechanics, electrical work, machine shop, those people who are technical. And later, those people found opportunities abroad. As you all know that these specific trades are actually on demand in certain countries. So most likely when those people are able to finish their, qualifications at poly, and then they are able to relocate abroad. So when we see those people who are in specific trades, we try to generalize the issue and say, okay, so poly is the way to go. But honestly, many people hear a few success stories. And once we hear that, we run with the narrative. I think it's something that has been, going on in our generation whereby people hear some things and immediately they assume that that scenario or that case that they have had applies to everyone. And I think that has created retaliation whereby parents are saying, you are not going to A-level, you are going to the Polytechnic. And sometimes the child's program that they are doing at the Polytechnic, guys, is not even part of the specific trades that I mentioned. And then in the end, you see that Mana is now struggling. So let's not assume that all programs are equal and all programs will open the same international doors. Honestly, that's not how it works. There are certain professions that can be done in Polytechnic and people are able to move abroad. And then there are certain professions that actually make you realize that after you finish that program, you still have to go to the university to get a bachelor's degree. So that is a wrong assumption altogether, and it can limit the student's future. So you might be wondering, all right, you have said that Polytechnic is better. So what you want us to do is show us why you think a child should go to A-level and not Polytechnic. Honestly, A-level matters because honestly, A-level is not for all those 15 pointers that you think are the only ones who deserve to go to A-level. A-level is for every student who wants academic growth. That's why you see that if someone has E's or D's in A-level, they are officially recognized as 2 A-level passes. Whereas when we're in O-level, a D or an E was a fail. So it shows you that A-level is designed for a wide range of students, not just the top cream or the top 1%. The second thing why A-level matters is that universities will still require A-level, right? And most universities, whether we are talking about Zimbabwe, unless you're getting in through the mature entry, which we all know that time would have passed, they would actually require you to have A-level. And if you are planning to apply abroad, A-level is still expected from you, or anything that is equivalent, that is the IBMs and all of that. So even if you started poly, when you eventually want a degree, A-level may be required. So it's one thing that I want parents to really sit down and think before the O-level results are out, before you start pushing your child towards going to poly. It is one thing that one has to sit down and think that, is it worth it, or I really need to think about it and send my child to A-level. And then when a child goes for A-level, they have a strong academic foundation. Especially if a child does sciences, they will perform better in those engineering programs, in those nursing, in those IT, in those environmental science. So, those 2 years whereby someone goes to A-level, we normally look at them and say, maybe it's a waste of time, but it isn't, because the student is maturing physically and also maturing mentally. Then you would see that when these kids kids go for their bachelors, they are actually much more ready. They perform much more better. We have seen people who have not done well in A level go on to get distinctions for their bachelors. I don't know, this period kind of opens up your mind to different things. So honestly, we might take these 2 years as a waste of time. We are trying to push kids to go into polytechnic, push them into working environments when actually their minds are not ready for that. And honestly, without A level, many students struggle academically. I don't know. I'm someone who also went to A level, and I think the mind that I had when I was doing my Form 4 and when I finished was a bit, childish and not really knowing what I really want. But during A level, I kind of matured in a way that some of the things that used to excite me before were no longer exciting me. And academically, I surely matured. So you should consider this for your child as well. Then there's something that we don't want to talk about, but the statistics speaks for themselves. Probably if you're sitting there and you're watching this and you look around in your community and try to see how many dropout rates you have seen in your community for people who are pushed to go to poly early, just O level to poly. You'll see that some of them do NC and then they no longer go again, and then they just drop out, they don't finish. Some of them finish NC, but during the diploma, they don't finish. There's a lot of dropout, rates for people who do the O level to poly. And many first year tertiary students who skipped A level end up dropping out, not because they are not academically, ready, but sometimes they are underprepared, and sometimes the polytechnic setup is not like an A level setup whereby people still go back to school, all those teachers pushing you to do things, or if you send them to boarding. But at poly, the environment is like you are now adults. And if your child is not ready for that, guys, a lot of things can happen. So please consider this. Consider sending your child for A level because it helps build maturity. As I said, it helps them to be disciplined. They also learn different study skills. I remember when I was doing my A level as well, everyone was admiring the A levels. Why? Because you'll be much more focused and you'll be much more mature. Whereas if you send your child to polytechnic directly, some of them are not ready for what's there because probably that polytechnic program they are attending with people probably who are raising families or people who have taken polytechnic as the last resort. They are mature, and if your child ends up in the wrong group, you actually cry, honestly. So consider that as well. And then one thing that is, talked about, but people maybe take it as some people who are trying to brag or something, is that A level gives you flexibility and future options. So with A level, you keep your options wide. Whether you want to go to the university, you can go. Whether you want to go to the polytechnic or the vocational training or even do a trade later, A level strengthens your foundations. So the thing is that once you have A level, you can still go back and study those trades. You have that option. Or you can say, okay, I want to go to university. So it's something that you need to consider. I know my view is a bit biased, but I'm trying to make you parents see that don't just hope on this polytechnic versus A level thing that is going on, and then you limit your child who might have gone to A level, done their sciences, end up being a medical doctor. Yet you push them and said, go to poly, but see how you are limiting your child. And then the last thing is social and emotional safety for minors. A levels keeps minors in an age-appropriate environment. I think I have actually mentioned this before, that when you send your child to poly, there is going to be a mix-up of different age groups in that polytechnic program. Whereas if you send them to A level, they are with their age groups, they're at school, maybe you're sending them back to the boarding school where they learned their O level or something. But they are the same age. Whereas when you send them to poly, it's a mixture of, old people, it's a mixture of people who have started their families, it's a mixture of people maybe who are being pushed by their parents to go to school, but they don't want. And imagine if your child sits next to that person for the whole of the semester, probably their mind is going to influence into bad things. So polytechnic places your child among adults who will treat them as adults. That's why you see no one will be pushing you to say read guys in Polytechnic, because you are deemed as people who know what they are doing. Even when they are below age of consent, they are just exposed to the things, right? And that social jump is not always healthy. It's not always safe for your kids. So consider that before you push your child to go to a polytechnic. One thing that I want you guys to know is that not all poly courses lead to migration pathways. Some of you guys are pushing your kids to be doing things that are not on critical skills. So as you push your child to go to the polytechnic, look at what they are doing and see if it is going to open them to migration pathways, if that is your goal. So make sure that if you push your child, maybe you are sending them to trades that open international opportunities. For example, welding, plumbing, electrical work, motor mechanics. But don't just push your child to do that when you know that your child is more interested into becoming a medical doctor or a radiography, just for the sake that you want them to migrate. Sometimes it is important to sit down with your kids, know what they want to do. That really helps. So not every poly course leads to these outcomes. So parents, before you push your kids to go to poly, understand the differences and understand what is going to happen after your kids study there. So the bottom line, or the main story, or to summarize, is that A-level still remains a strong academic and social foundation. It is not only for top students, it is for anyone who wants solid preparation, for any tertiary path, including poly. So before you send your kids to other things that they do not need to be sent to, don't follow trends. Follow strategy and long-term thinking. In my last video, I discussed with you guys how every decision that you're making today is for your child, for their academic, is going to affect how things are going to be 5, 6, 7 years down the line. So do not treat this as a separate entity. Do not follow trends. Do not just use social media as your only tool of research. Sit down and really understand the systems before you push your kids into things that are going to stress them later. So thank you guys for listening. I know I talk too much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your loved ones, or share with a parent whom you think they really need this message. Bye. Ciao.